Everdell Duo is the newest in a line of games that these companies are coming out with where they take a bigger game and make a two-player only version, although this one does have a solo element to it, but whatever, we might get into that. But taking a bigger game, making a two-player version of it to try and instill that essence into it. Does this game succeed? Well, stick around after I show you how it plays to hear if I think it go that well. It's going to be a brief how to play of Everdell Duo competitively. If you want to see it cooperatively, I'll include a link right above here where you can see me take on the cooperative mode. Solo plays the same as the cooperative mode. You'll get the rules down there. So to set up the game, you're going to put the board in the middle. You're going to deal cards out on the board. You're going to put the sun and moon trackers there. You are going to be grabbing some tiles from the A, the B, the C, to D. You're going to be grabbing this fair tile. You're going to be shuffling them up to put along the top, where you're also going to be putting the journey tile up there. So after you give these a shuffle, you are going to disperse them onto these top spots. You're going to put the shuffle deck of cards off to the side. You're going to have the winter, spring, summer, and fall tokens tiles over there. You'll have the resources where everyone can reach them. You're going to have these tokens here where everyone can reach them, the occupy tokens, point tokens. You're going to shuffle up these river tiles, deal 2 out, leave that nearby for when you use it throughout the game. One person is going to be the rabbit, one's going to be, or the hare, the tortoise. Each player gets 2 cards and a player aid. You're then ready to begin by doing the actions depicted on the winter tile. So when you resolve one of these tiles, you're going to look at it. First off, you're going to make sure you're not on the side with the skunk. That is for the cooperative side. On this side, it shows who's going to go first. In this instance, it's going to be the hare. They're going to draw 1 card from the deck because it doesn't have the grass on it. The tortoise is going to grab 1 from the deck and grab 1 from the meadow. When you grab from the meadow, you can grab any card in the meadow that you want. So in this instance, that, and then say they grab this one, it would get refilled immediately. You would then start taking turns. What you can do on a turn is depicted on your player aid card right here. So you're going to either be able to place a worker out, play a card, or take a card. At any time, you can discard 2 cards for a good of your choice. So if you choose to do the place a worker action, you're going to take one of your workers. There are these various spots around the board. On here, on these river tiles, up here by the goals, and then as you saw on that post office card, there is one on these red cards. To activate one, you're just going to simply take your character, put it there, and do what is depicted. These all have the symbols, so basically these are going to be grabbing resources, getting cards, or getting occupy tokens. To come up here to the events, you'll get the good depicted next to it. Then you'll also be able to complete an event if you have the requirements. So you can go up there only when you can meet these requirements. So the flower festival, you'll see you need to have 2 of the red cards out and 1 of these purple. Next one is this foe defeated. You need to have more villagers plus goods than your opponent. But you'll see the 6 here. That means you need to have at least 6. So you can't just put out 1 and then rush up there and grab it. You need to have at least 6 of them in order to accomplish that event. Same thing over here with the treaty, you need at least 5. The journey is awarded at the end of the game, so that does not have a spot on it. Then, once you have placed your worker and done everything involved in the spot you placed it, you are going to move this sun token 1 spot along the path. The next thing you can do is you can play a card. You can play a card from your hand, or you can play a card from the meadow, based on where the tokens are. So for an example, if this moon, or if the sun was here and the moon was still here, when you went to go play a card, you can play one of the cards from your hand, these 2 because they're adjacent to the moon, or these 4 because they're adjacent to the sun. To play a card, there's 2 options. 1, you can just pay the resources shown above, in this instance a wood and 2 resin. The other option is if they are a critter and you have a building of the same type out. So to use an example, so say I have this in out and I have this chipsmith in my hand. Instead of paying the 3 berries, as long as I have an Occupy token in my supply, I can instead take the Occupy token, place it on the inn to play out a critter of the same type. You may at most have 1 Occupy token on each color building. So now that I have done this, I cannot put an Occupy token on another red building in my village. My opponent can. They can do whatever they want in their village, as long as they, again, abide by the 1 occupied per color rule. If you play it from the meadow, it'd be the same instance of you would take it, you'd put it in front of you, and then you just refill the meadow. After you're done playing the card and resolving all of its effects, you move the moon token forward 1 spot. The last thing you can do on your turn is you can take a card from the meadow or take a card from the deck. Once you have completed that and refilled the meadow, you will then choose either the sun or moon token to move. It is your choice. If the sun is at the end and is not able to move, you are not able to take the place a worker action. Instead, you'd have to play a card or take one from here, moving the moon forward. Once both tokens have moved to the end of the track, you are going to begin the end of season phase. The end of season phase, you would take all of your workers back that are on locations. You will return these to the first spot. You will discard the season token, and then you'll look at this next one doing what it says. So the first thing you would do is you would discard these 2 locations, and you would bring out 2 new ones. And then in the instance of this tile, you're going to look. Now the tortoise is the first player. You are going to activate all of your green buildings doing production, and then the hare is going to do that, and they are also going to draw a card. The one thing I do want to get back to when you place on a location, so if my opponent has a location out, as I said, you can place a worker on there. However, if I place my worker on my opponent's location, they're going to grab a point token and get a point for me using it. So, again, at the end of the season, these go away. Once you are at the end of the last season, so in the 4th season, once these have reached the end, you are going to move into endgame scoring. The first thing you're going to do with endgame scoring is you are going to award the journey tile to whoever has more cards in the hand and city. If there's a tie, nobody gets the journey tile. You then are going to add up points on your cards, as depicted on the cards there. You are going to look at any purple bonus cards, such as this bank, which says 1 point for every 3 points you have. So this is endgame scoring. You're going to get any points tokens you've accumulated throughout the game, and then any points on any events, including that journey tile if you had gotten it. Most points wins the game. The ties are broken in this manner: most events achieved, most leftover resources, most cards in city, and most cards in hand. So that is roughly how you play Everdell. Let's go ahead and get into how I think it'd go. So there you go. That is roughly how Everdell Duo plays competitively. Again, cooperatively, you'll see I have included a link to that over there, up above, and then down below there will also be a link to that playthrough I did where you can kind of analyze and see how that goes. So one thing I will preface with saying in this review is I will be comparing a lot to Everdell, so hopefully you'll know how to have played Everdell or how that is. If not, I'll include links to all the stuff that we've done for that down below as well. So I know we did a solo play of it. I believe I did a mobile play of it, but kind of so you can experience Everdell if you haven't. But I am going to compare the two, seeing as this was supposed to kind of be like a 2-player implementation of it, and how I kind of think those two do compare with it. So first off, we are going to start with inside the box. So again, if you are aware of the game quality of an Everdell game, this is very comparable with that. The tokens are decent thickness. The resource tokens are these 3D ones. They feel really premium. The berries are squishy. The rocks are nice and smooth and shiny. The wood bits are really nice. The point tokens work well for what they are. All of that. The cards, the artwork is beautiful. These cards are smaller than Everdell cards. These are more like the mini card sizes to the regular size. So that is one difference with it. The rulebook laid out fine. It explains the game well, especially in the competitive version. Once it gets into the co-op version and the challenge version, They stopped using as many illustrations as examples, it seems, so that was a little bit more convoluted to get through. But the actual base game competitive version, the rules explained everything well, walked you through things. And I believe it was the back of the rule book. They said, hey, if you're a seasoned Everdell player, here's what you need to know has changed. And then they go through the rules changes just to kind of bring you up to speed so you know what to keep an eye out for and what to keep present in your mind, that you don't keep harkening back to Everdell to make the judgment calls. With the campaign, they came with some campaign sheets. Was a little disappointed. They kind of were just thrown in there haphazardly. They weren't part of a booklet or anything or like a pad. They were just kind of thrown in there. And it didn't look like there was that many. I mean, I don't know how many campaigns you really play of this one, but it didn't really seem like there was a ton of them in there for it. I'm sure you can print more up on the interwebs, but based in there wasn't as many. That, and I felt like the Occupy tokens could have been a little bit bigger. They were awfully small and kind of hard to pick up and manage. They could have made them a bit bigger to really kind of stand out and excel in that premium feel that this game typically does have. Moving on to the two-player experience. So basically this is a two-player game. Like I said, there's a solo element to it, but in essence, you're basically just playing the two-player cooperative version by yourself. You even have two hands and act as two separate players. So at its core and heart, this really is just a two-player game. With that being said, it moves along quickly. There's not much to bog people down. The turn order rotating from season to season is a nice touch too, especially because this is a game, especially with those river locations, where first player could seem like a drastic advantage if someone's going to constantly get it, because they always have first crack at those possibly really good river tiles. And not only is the turn order switch back and forth, but the fact that there's always a second player compensation, not just the first round, but every turn the second player gets a little bit more. That is also something that just makes it still feel worthwhile to have that second player advantage. So one example is, as I showed you some of those fair tiles, event tiles at top, there's one that has more cards in hand than your opponent. You need at least 5. Well, you start off with 2, and then if you're the turtle player, you start off with 2 more in your hand. So technically, if you go and get 1 more card, you can automatically grab that event and have a 5-point head start. So being able to choose when you are able to use those advantages, that the second player advantage does seem to do a good job of kind of evening things out as you go through. But now we get into gameplay, and this is where my biggest gripe and my most profound issue with the game is. So let me preface by saying one of the things I really like about Everdell is it's one of those games that starts off where you're not necessarily thinking you're going to get a lot done. It's hard to get cards out. You're not getting resources much. You have very limited workers. So you're like, how am I going to be able, 15 people in my village? That just seems far-fetched. And by the end of the game, you're putting out all this stuff. You're getting it. Your village is full. You're like, oh my God, I actually needed more room. And it blossoms. It crescendos so well throughout the game that it just escalates to that point. This version does not have that. You don't get more workers. You have 3 throughout the game. That's it. They come back every season, so you only ever have 3. The way that the turn structure is laid out to where the sun and moon are always moving. So you are limited by turns, not by how well of an engine you can get or how well you can manipulate the cards or how well you can do this. You are only going to be able to do so many things each turn, and you are going to have to maximize when you do those. And in that regards, this game can get mean. It can be where, as I said, to place a worker out, you need to have that sun token available. Well, if someone focuses on getting their workers out and then you start drawing cards to push that sun, oh, sorry, you can't put out any workers, so you're going to be resource poor now. There is that really mean element that can get added to this game by adding in that turn structure. It feels much tighter in that regards then. There is no way to optimize something and make it to where you can extend your turns a bit more before you have to refresh for the season. No, everyone's refreshing the season after those tokens move. I believe there is 6 spaces on each track. So you have 12 spaces. So it could even be where you end up having a wasted action because you weren't able to get that worker out and only the moon's there and you don't have enough stuff to play something out. All right, well, I guess I'm grabbing a card. I didn't want to. That's not going to do anything for me, but that's what I'm going to have to do. So that gameplay element with those moving along the tracks is really what brings this one down for me. It lacks, to me, what the core fun factor and core essence of Everdell was that draws me to Everdell. The whole fact of how am I going to optimize my village to be able to take so many turns and push off refreshing because maybe I'm blocking those good spots for my opponent. So if I can leave them out there and still do all this other fun stuff, cool. All right, now I'm going to go do this. The whole opening up the Occupy tokens where now it's a resource, so you need to have an action to go get the Occupy token before you can even use it, and that it's not designated to a specific critter but a certain color, and then you can only have one on each one. I'll tell you right now, that bogged the bride down. That was one of the rules changes she had a hard time getting her head around, was getting the Occupied and all of that. So a game that has already taken away actions and turns from what the regular game is now adding something you have to do in order to put something out for free. So in essence, it's not free anymore. Yeah, you don't have to spend the berries, but you use that action to instead get an Occupy token when you could have just used the action to get berries and then put it out. And then there's no difference. So that whole element there really took it down. I think it would have been just better if, hey, you start with 5 Occupy tokens, 1 per color, use them when you want, don't get an action to get them, because it still adds that free play to it where you're not having to spend one of your actions to get the stuff to be able to put the stuff out. So all that boils down to that whole where it just feels like the game ends because of turns and not because you mismanage something or you're able to extend it because you optimize something. It's a hard limit. You are going to have 18 turns in the game. That's it. You're done. And that really draws it down from the Everdell experience to me. That does kind of lead into one reason why I might take it over Everdell, and we'll cover that now that when we go into our overall. So overall, given time, space, everything being optimal, I am going to choose Everdell every single time over Everdell Duo. The times I would choose Everdell Duo is when I am short on space, because Everdell takes up a ton of space with the big cards and the market and the board, especially if expansions, it can take up an entire table. Everdell Duo, much smaller. So if table space is a concern, we're busting that out. If time is a concern, we're busting out Everdell Duo, because Everdell can kind of extend out. Like I said, you can extend turns, and also it takes more time to put out. We have the big complete collection, so kind of grabbing out all the boards, getting all the components, doing all this. It does take longer to set up. So if you're looking for smaller space, quicker time, 2-player version, then yeah, Everdell Duo is for you. If you're looking for that fun Everdell experience everyone keeps talking about, this is not the game for you. Again, this is a game it's going to be tight. It is going to be, you are going to have to maximize every little thing. If you waste a turn doing something, you are behind the 8 ball from the go. Especially when you get to that last turn and everyone's wanting to play cards. Well, if you're having to try and get resources to play those cards and your other person optimize that more, guess what? They're going to get more cards out for you and they're just going to crush you. So it just feels that much tighter and, like I said, meaner. So that is why overall I'm saying it go okay as a 6 out of 10, and the only reason I'm giving that is because that means basically we'll play in the mood, and that mood will be short on time, short on table space. That is why this is getting a 6 out of 10 for me. I really was debating a 5 out of 10 where I'll take it or leave it, because again, in a perfect world, I would never play it because I'd always be playing Everdell. Granted, it's not a perfect world. That's why it got bumped up to a 6 instead of a 5. So again, Everdell Duo. So that is how I think it go. Why don't you let me know how you think it go down below as a comment to this video. While down there, you can also hit like, subscribe, share, ring the bell to be alerted as we do more videos covering 2-player versions of games. 2-player perspective on games, for that is what we are trying to specialize in. In fact, I believe I have another one of those coming up here very soon by the end of the month. Also down there is ways of supporting the channel. You can hit up our Patreon and join our Patreon to help bring more of these videos to you and possibly even help shape content in the future as we do polls for what we are and are not going to cover. Or that's not something that you want to do, you could always hit our Ko-fi and support the channel with a one-time donation. In essence, buy me a drink to help me get through Everdell Duo. Such a disappointment. I was really hoping for more. With it being Everdell, I was really hoping for that experience. But anyways,